So I showed a couple. So welcome back, guys, to 3D printing pulse motors or 3D PM. Um, right now, I'm printing out my second coil, and I'm printing it fully. You guys know, or if you don't know, I usually print these coils out in two pieces because it's so much easier. I don't have to deal with support materials. But I figured out a setting to allow for only two pieces of support, actually four, an upper and lower, an inner wall, and an outer wall. Playing around with the slicer settings. Learn that stuff from Modbot and Chuck over at Chep. Those guys are great. Um, I wanted to increase the connection though between the brim and the actual part so that I don't get any warping, because I did get a little tiny bit of warping, but not much. And these are for the new solenoid motor, or not the new solenoid, but the solenoid motor I'm going to enhance with better coils. And the reason why I had to print these out in one piece is because they wouldn't fit before. Because the way I did it before, oops, the way I did it before is you can see that edge there. That's the lip that I create and then glue it in there. And it's really strong because I use that acrylic glue. But I didn't take an account for the size, and I didn't want to remake these because they're a pain in the butt, even though they look pretty simple. So that's what I'm doing. And then once I'm done printing out, I only have two more coils to print out because there's only three per the solenoid motor. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go back a couple of videos, or actually go back I think one or two videos, and you'll see the solenoid motor in action. And you'll see the three coils around the perimeter. Well, I've been talking about redoing those coils for years, and I want to make them beefier. And I actually want to use thinner wire. I think those coils right now have 23 gauge on there, or 22 gauge, and the thicker the gauge, the more the current, the less the voltage. I think 23 gauge is a good happy medium, but I think I'd like to put 24 gauge on these, but I don't think I have any. So I might have to check it out and see if I can get some. I upgraded my FL Sun to have the flex bed, and man, what a difference. I really like this glass bed on this, and lately the parts have been coming off easier. I think I just needed to clean it, which is what I did. Go figure, right? The simplest solution. And now the parts they stick really well, but they're not impossible to get off. Anyway, here we go. These guys printed out really nice. Got the seam down the inner thing, which is kind of what I wanted. I was playing with seam location. I was going to go with random, but then it puts little pecks all over the part, and the part looks terrible. And these parts came out really nice. Anyway, stay tuned. So this is painfully slow. I'm using 25 gauge wire instead of the, what is this, the 23. I don't know that I can do this because it is painfully slow. Because this 25 is basically a third of the thickness of this. But it's coming out beautifully, but it's taking forever. I have that coil winder that I've never pulled out to see how it works. But I will have to make a decision on whether I want to continue with this 25 I'd much rather do a 24, but anyway, stay tuned. So you may notice difference in color. Yeah, I could not do the 25 gauge. I mean, I could, but not hand winding it. It's just too painful. It took me a fraction of the time to wind this first layer of this 23 gauge, with just some gorgeous wire, and it's laying down really nicely. So I figure I'm probably gonna put one, two, three, maybe 5 layers, maybe 6. Probably 6 because I want it to come back to the same end. So I've got a lot of winding to do. Stay tuned. Yeah, what a difference in the size of wire and the ease of at least hand rolling coils. So this is the 4th layer. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I may do 8 or 10 because I did want to make it significantly better than the ones that are on there. I have no idea how many turns the ones that are already on there. So got plenty of wires, so I'm not worried about that. It's just very time consuming, man. Anybody want to buy some waffles? Stay tuned. All right, 1 down, 2 more to go. Came out beautiful. 10 rows. And if we count those, 1, 2, 3, I'm not going to count them now, but beautiful. And in between each row is a 0.2 millimeter plastic layer. There's a little bit of gap there. I don't know what happened there. I think I might be able to. Anyway, nice and heavy. I'll have to check the resistance or the ohms. But yeah, looking good. Stay tuned. So this is the one that I finished yesterday, and I put a pretty thick coat of resin on there. So it's really nice. I'm really liking the way this came out. 10 layers, 2 coats of resin. So nothing's going to hurt this coil. And the fact that I was able to print it out in one piece really changes everything. I played around with the settings in Cura to get the minimal amount of supports and still have it come out good. So now I've got to wind the other 2. I think what I'm going to do is wind 1 more and put it on the 2 side coils, because those are the ones I use to run, and then I'll make the 3rd one for the pickup coil. Anyway, stay tuned. Welcome back. So I'm getting ready to install these 2 new coils that I just wound on these 2 areas here. I'm going to wind this coil later on with thinner wire to go up here on the top of the solenoid motor to be a pickup coil. I had to print out 3 new tubes. For these outer tubes here, you really can't see it because the rotor or the wheel is the same color as the tube, but you can see that this is thicker than this. So these coils sit on the outside of these tubes. And it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult than it seems, because when Spaceman Oz first started designing this solenoid motor and got in touch with me, and he and I, over the course of many months, redesigned, reprinted, redesigned. In theory, everything fits together perfectly, right? That's not the case in practice. And I remember when I was printing these guys out, for them to fit snugly inside the seating area of these outer plates. It took a lot of finagling. And so I'm hoping that I got it right again the first time. We will see. Once I get it apart, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But yeah, stay tuned. The first thing I need to do is, God, these came out beautiful, right? First thing I need to do is cut these off and wire on some sort of connectors. I don't think I'm going to go with the same thing, or maybe I will. I don't know. But stay tuned. So I almost went with the same connector. I like those, but they're kind of a pain. So instead, I went with a nice, clean, little green terminal. Now I'm just going to hot glue the terminal down and maybe put a little plastic or hot glue over the soldering connection, which I don't like doing, but I also don't like leaving those exposed. There's got to be a better way to do that other than putting tape on there. If anybody's got some good suggestions other than putting another piece of heat shrink tubing. Oh, you know what I could do? I could take a piece of heat shrink and then slice it down the side and place it over it and then just heat it on it. Yeah, something like that might work. Let me try that and I'll get back. Stay tuned. So that actually worked. I just slid it down the middle, flipped it over it, threw some heat on there. I had to be careful though because I heated up the coil and that got a little bendy. It's all right though because the windings are fine. But yeah, that actually worked. Maybe drop a little bit of crazy glue on there just to make sure. But yeah, if anybody wanted to know, that worked. Ciao. Stay tuned. Not bad. Not bad. Now I can start taking this guy apart. And I have to make sure that this guy goes on, or is it this one? Yeah, this one goes on upside down like this. And then this one goes right side up like this, so that I have the correct orientation. Something like that. And I just noticed that on these, I put the black on the finish instead of the red, because finish is always positive. Negative is always the start. I don't know why I did that, but because I did it on all of them, it didn't seem to matter to the circuit, which is kind of weird, but not really if you think about it. Anyway, let me get this thing apart and I can show you what I'm talking about these guys fitting inside the housing. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so here's the inside, if you guys don't remember. And this is what I'm talking about here. There's a cutout on all 4 corners, all 8 corners actually. Here, you can see it better here. There's a cutout right there where the tubes, where these guide tubes sit in. And when I did it originally, it took some finagling to get those tubes correct. I also want to redo or redesign the bearings because they seem to be a little sloppy. Either redesign it or, yeah, make it tighter or make the spacers bigger. I don't know. I have to figure it out. Oops. Yeah, those magnets are powerful. Yeah, now that I have, and what I'm going to do this time that I've failed to do before when I take this apart. I'm only going to take apart one of the connections. I can then cock it and slide everything out. I may have to undo one of the other screws, but if I remember correctly, I glued these guys together to make it easier. This piece, which is really 4 pieces. And I remember way back in some of the designs, these were even broken up, and we changed that. We changed a lot on this. I don't remember why this is red and this is blue. I think these are 2 separate. Oh, yeah. So in the middle of designing, yeah, see, this one is broken up into segments. I think in the middle of the designing process, Spaceman from Australia, the designer of this, well, he designed the very first one, which was a geared mechanism. Then he and I worked together to change it, but he's the designer of this, absolutely. I think this was a later design, and we changed it to a solid piece, or this was an earlier design and we changed it to a solid piece. But I remember liking this design. I forgot about that because the external colors are exactly the same, that red PLA. I don't remember why we did it like this. Spaceman, if you're watching, do you remember why one of these were cut up like this into different segments? Was that just one of the designs for this outer beam, and then we went with a solid one, or vice versa? If you remember, if you're watching this, hit me up, let me know. And I remember, yeah, so I need to pull this out and slide these 2 bottom ones off. I'm going to leave the top one in for now the way it is, and I'll just use 2 of the new guide tubes. But I want to, what is that? I want to fix, because these bearings were doing a lot of wobbling, and I don't know if it's because the bolts don't fit through snugly. Let me check it out. Stay tuned. Yeah, that's it. I can't do it one-handed, but the bolts have a little bit of a play in them. I don't know if you could see that. They're not as tight as they could be. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to tighten that up, because that little bit of slop, I don't know if you could see it there, that little bit of slop, along with the slop from the washers, although I think the washers are tight. I can always make the washers better. Yeah, see, the washers are pretty tight, so they've got a snug fit. And I was hoping that that would be enough to stop that, but no, you can see that. Yeah, I'll have to figure something out. So I have 2 things I need to figure out, and I could just reprint the rollers and that would solve everything. But the same issue I had with tweaking these cone, or these guide tubes to fit perfectly in there, I also had the same issue with these rollers. Spaceman and I went through many variations in trying to, and I have them in folders, and trying to find the exact one that I had without having to recreate this. So I need to fix the slop in the bearing and fix the slop in the bolt. What I could do, so the bearings, I think that's an easy fix. I can just put a little bit of resin inside there, let it harden, and press fit those in there. Oh, you know what? I could do the same thing with the bolts. maybe slap on a little resin, but that's going to take a while because it needs to dry. Ugh. And I have no patience for that. There's got to be a quicker solution. All right, let me go and think on this. Stay tuned. So, in the same thought process as putting some resin on there, I'm thinking I can put some of this metal paint because the play is literally, it's like this. I mean, it's like a 0.5 millimeter of play, and a coat of paint might just take it up. Of course, it'll wear over time, but I'm only going to, yeah, I think it'll be okay. And then as far as the bearings and the play inside here, I can just take that up with some resin. That's not a big deal. It's the bolts that have the most play. Let me see how this anodized metal trim paint or anodized metal trim and paint. It's a oil rub bronze. My wife loves that color. We have it going through our house, in the kitchen and in the bathrooms. Anyway, I do a lot of touch-up work. Yeah, and I have a bunch of other paints. I could try just a polyurethane. Just put a thin coat on there. I'll try this first though, because I have it out. So let me give that a shot. Stay tuned. So I think, excuse me, the paint was going to work. I'm going to put several coats on there, let it dry really good. And then if I need to, I can sand it. Well, I was thinking I've got primer. That's what I should have did, but that's such a mess. The paint, I think, is a little bit easier. And then I just coated the insides of the bearing walls with some thick, crazy glue. Oops, shit. Let that sit. See how that works. Stay tuned. So lining the wall of these with crazy glue worked really well. It dried hard, and these are now a press fit, so there's no play. There's no play in these. So that's good. So now I just got to wait for these to dry. I could hit them with the heat gun. That'll dry them off a little quicker, I think. Because I want to try it and see if it's going to work. I'm pretty sure it will. I may have to either reprint the spacers or just kind of file them out, make them a little bit bigger, because they were a tight fit on the bolt when I first started. So I think while that's drying, I can go ahead and start taking this guy apart. So let me go ahead and do that. Stay tuned. All right, so I checked it, and these do fit in there nicely. In fact, they fit better than these guys, which I'm really surprised. So now I have them set up like this, and I just have to slide them on and then get it together. What I'd like to do though is, even though these are nice and tight, they're not as tight as the originals. But I do not want to put any crazy glue on there. That's the problem. That's why I can't get these apart. Otherwise, I would just use the same guide tubes. Although I do like the black ones a little bit better. I think they'll be okay. I just don't want them, when they're energized, to get pushed around by the magnet. It should be fine. Maybe I'll put something in there to keep it tight. I don't know. All right, let me take a look at this and then get it going. Stay tuned. All right, so everything fits beautifully. And the paint has dried, and it is definitely taking up this space because it's kind of hard for me to push that on there. So that's great. So I should be able to get this puppy together and get a first run going. Yeah, so these are sitting in, the black ones are sitting in perfectly in those gaps there. And I tried the top on already, and that fits beautifully. In fact, I almost put it together without putting the bearings in, or the rollers, which would have been terrible. All right, stay tuned. All right, so it's all back together, and the wobble is gone. It's still noisy as all hell, but the wobble is gone. So I took care of that. There's no play. Might be a little too tight. No, I think it's all right because it flows really nicely. So let me hook up the new circuit and see what we got. Stay tuned. It's noisy, but she's flying. A lot of output. Woo! Yeah, she was flying. Flying, lots of output. Yeah, so I'm going to wind up this guy here with thinner wire to put up here for the output. Love this motor. All right, guys, thanks for watching.